Alright, let's get started. Sorry I'm late. I know, it's already a week into August. I have watched a lot of good movies this month though, so let's go. I started with watching two Edgar Wright movies. First, the last of the Cornetto trilogy, The World's End, and then I rewatched Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. First, let me just say, I love Edgar Wright. I love his style, I love how he writes his movies, I love how he edits his movies, I love his humor, and I love the performances he gets out of the actors in all his movies. Having said that, why the hell had I not watched The World's End? I had watched and loved the first two movies of this trilogy. That's not really a trilogy. Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are amazing. Anyways, back to The World's End. Probably my favorite one in the trilogy. Perhaps the funniest movie I've ever watched. Okay, well, maybe not, but the amount of times that I burst out laughing to the point that I had to pause the movie to catch my breath was insane. And yes, I have been told my sense of humor is weird and sometimes I laugh a little bit too hard in movies, but I don't care. It was funny, so I laughed. Simon Pegg is the best. I love him in everything, and he shines in this movie. And I've heard him talk about his role in this movie and how much it resonated with him, and you can really tell he gives it his all. His chemistry with Nick Frost is on point, even in this movie, where Nick plays a very different role than he usually does. Anyways, this movie was amazing. The dialogue was some of my favorite in any movie, super witty and entertaining, and not a single line is without meaning. Edgar Wright always finds a way to tie all of his lines together, and he always has a ton of callbacks to previous lines. Now, near the midpoint of the movie, something happens. I wasn't expecting it, but I love it. The ending is nuts, I'm not gonna lie, but again, I love it. It really goes to show that if the director and the actors are having fun and just being passionate for the project, then anything really flies, because this ending, again, was nuts. 4.5 stars out of 5. We are in no way in shortage of comic book adaptations. There are many, and I mean many, very different comic book stories that have been adapted into the big screen. Most of them take a more real-life approach and sidestep the comic book feel of the original source material. There are also some that have made the transition from comic book to the big screen as seamless as possible, with movies such as Spider-Verse, which managed to literally make you feel like you're watching a comic book come to life, with the vibrant colors and the distinct action. But then again, Spider-Verse has the advantage of working within the medium of animation, as opposed to the challenge of charging a live-action movie with the creativity of comics. Then there's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Edgar Wright, one of my favorite directors, takes a very unique approach to telling a pretty basic story about a guy finding the type of person he is and coming to accept, respect, and love himself for the person he truly is. Michael Cera is Michael Cera at his best. He's amazing in this movie, and we start this movie with probably an all-time best introduction that you can have in a movie, with a very high level of energy that never lets down, and it also gives us a taste into what the rest of the movie is going to be like. We also introduce the music and how greatly incorporated it is. The music in this movie brings a lively undertone, while at the same time popping out as very fun, very weird, but also very awesome soundtrack for a movie. The movie's brilliant editing and marvelous camera work make for some iconic shots and stills. It is this that really reminds you that you're watching a comic book adaptation and makes the best of it. I honestly can't praise the editing and the camera work enough, but honestly, what else do you expect when you're watching an Edgar Wright movie? It's a little weird sometimes too, I'm not gonna lie. If it sounds like the type of movie for you, go watch it. If not, then don't. Also, it's freaking hilarious. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I watched Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Last month I watched the first 3 movies in the series. This month I got through the next 3. And there is very noticeable shift in tone, mostly due to the third one's initiative to make things more serious. Serious. Anyways, I won't go super in depth into either of these. I love all of them a lot, and talking about them in detail seems like too much of a daunting task, at least at the moment. So the 4th movie, I will say, is close to my least favorite of the series so far. At least when you're compared to the book and how some of the adaptation decisions were not very smart. It's not that I dislike the movie, but I just seem to have more nagging small problems with this movie, although they did handle Voldemort's return very well. Again, I'm not rating this one or any of the other Harry Potter movies. I don't know why, so don't ask. Anyways, Harry Potter 5. This one also skipped a lot of stuff from the books, but this one I can understand. The book was overflowing with details and it was bogged down with unnecessary plot points, so I can appreciate them toning it down a little bit, at least for this movie. I think this one is my favorite so far. It handled the tension of the students really well, with their school life interfering with what they felt needed to be done to protect themselves. The acting was also really good. Daniel Radcliffe's performance is really good in this movie. He felt more confident and more challenged in this one. The stakes were also starting to get really high for everyone after the last one, so the pressure really shows in this one. Harry Potter 6, this is the other one that the 4th one would compete for the worst Harry Potter movie. And that's a weird sentence to say because I can also see how some people would place this near the top. Heck, even I have at some point. But I don't know, it just focused too much on some things, like the weird teen romance storylines, added other things that were unnecessary, like the Weasley's house getting burnt down, and also completely cut out other things, like the fight at Hogwarts at the end, which is the main reason why Draco was mending the cabinet in the first place. And the movie also made all the scenes with Harry and Ginny so awkward awkward. It does have a lot of really good things about it, however, like all the pensive memories, the relationship between the friends, the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore, and every scene with Draco is great. You really feel for his character, and also the scene in the cave is just awesome. So overall, as disappointing as this movie may have been when comparing it to the books, it's not all that bad, like at all. So then I showed my sisters the Iron Man Trilogy. I feel bad about rushing through it because I could make a whole video on these movies, especially the first one, what it did to superhero movies and just movies as a whole, how Kevin Feige and Jon Favreau managed to kickstart a cinematic universe bigger than anyone expected because of this one movie, this one amazing movie that I will never forget my first time seeing. I love everything about it, from Robert Downey Jr.'s performance to the now cliche villain who's just a mere reflection on who our protagonists could have been. So yeah, the movie's not perfect, but I love it regardless. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 and move on to the second Iron Man, which quite honestly gets way too much hate. And yes, of course it doesn't compare to the first one, and yes, the plot is cramped with a million plot points, many of which aren't even resolved, but when you look at it as a whole, many of the things that made the first one so good are still present in this movie. Robert Downey Jr. is as charismatic as always, at least when the movie isn't having Tony be a complete douchebag. Tony's relationship with Pepper also expands and you get some nice backstory to Tony's dad, which I believe adds to his character overall. Also, Justin Hammer is amazing, so I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Then there's Iron Man 3, a movie that does an amazing job at finishing Tony Stark's arc, ties up the conflict and the duality between Iron Man and Tony, and finally reaches a point where the character feels like he has purpose and isn't lost anymore. It has some amazing action, great humor, and yet it is still hated on because people don't like the twist ending with the villain. Like, what? This is a great movie and that's what you focus on? You get to see Tony being a hero without the suit. You get to see him learn and realize that it's what's on the inside that matters, and I don't know, I just think it's a lot better than people give it credit for, and I believe it deserves a rewatch if you've forgotten, so go watch it. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I continued showing Marvel movies to my sisters, and I watched the second and third Captain America movies. Nothing against the first one, but they have already watched it, and I just think the second and third are much better. So we started with the second one, the one that is regarded as one of the MCU's strongest movies, and it completely delivered. I had forgotten all the reasons I love it, from the action to the plot to the deeper themes that challenge our main protagonist and place him in a position that goes against the government, which, by the way, is a great setup for the next movie. So this movie was insane. I remember the hype when this came out. It matched the hype for the first Avengers movie. I mean, knowing that the universe was expanding, Black Panther and Spider-Man were going to be joining, and that all the superheroes were going to be fighting, like, there was a very good reason for the hype. And then the Russo brothers actually delivered and showed the world that they can actually handle having a lot of characters on screen without the movie feeling crowded or oversaturated with plot points. This was a really good movie that nailed the emotional side of the reasons why the Avengers are fighting, and you really get to see both sides' perspective. So yeah, I'm going to give this one a 4.5 stars out of 5. Then I watched $1 Million Baby. I love boxing movies a lot, and I have a hard time picking my favorite from the classic Rocky to the later Creed movies, which are also phenomenal, to other movies like Southpaw, and now I have another movie to struggle in placing amongst my favorite. $1 Million Baby is, simply put, masterful. In the directing, the writing, the cinematography, the themes, the acting, everything about this movie is amazing. And like many other of my favorite boxing movies, it's not really a boxing movie. It's more of a character drama with some boxing in it. I honestly don't understand how I came to love this movie as much as I do, but I love it. The ending I know can be seen as controversial, but I truly believe that it fits perfectly with the character of Maggie. Again, I can't praise this movie enough. I don't know how it took me so long to watch it. Right now I'm feeling a 5 out of 5 stars, and the funny thing is, I don't think I'm overhyping it. Next up, I watched Nightcrawler. So a little backstory, I have been helping shoot a short film this month directed by my friend Javier, which by the way, we're putting on his YouTube channel soon. I'll link the channel in my description. But anyways, I was over at his house and we were going to work on some editing, but then we didn't. Instead, we got some Takis, bought some pizza, and put on a movie that we both had been wanting to watch for a while. None of this backstory matters, but anyways, the movie we watched was Nightcrawler, and it was one of the best movies I have ever seen. The story was engaging from start to finish as we get to know the main character and we see the extent that he is willing to go to reach his goals. He is highly motivated, and also he is a psychopath. He preys on the weak, manipulates others to get his way, and is one of the most unsettling people ever, thanks of course to Jake Gyllenhaal. He was insane in this movie. He's one of my favorite actors, and also he didn't even get an Oscar nomination for this, and honestly, that should be a crime. 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I watched the Bourne movies. These are classic. The whole trilogy is. I love them all, and I'm not going to talk about them individually. I'm just going to talk about them as a whole. And actually, I'm not even going to say a whole lot about them. These are action thrillers. They do a good job at being action thrillers. They handle the action in a very stress-inducing way, and they make you care for the character a lot, mainly because of the great performance by Matt Damon. If you like action movies and you like good movies, then go watch this trilogy. I don't know what you're waiting for. 4.5 stars out of 5. Well guys, that's all the movies I watched this month. I guess it's not as many as I thought, but I guess I watched a lot of trilogies and movies in a series this month. so it just felt like it was more than it really was. Next month I'll probably try to watch more individual films after I finish the Harry Potter series. If you did enjoy this video, check out my previous videos, and as always, drop a like and drop in later.